So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, all over the world, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in US, in Canada, in Sweden, or in Africa, in Asia, in North America, South America, in Europe, Australia, or in any part of the world. So we're here again to bring you an exciting video about corporate compliances. So in this video, we'll be considering a very important corporate compliance. As you can see from the screen, is withholding VAT is part of corporate tax compliance in Nigeria. My name is Oluwatosin Maja. I'm the managing partner of Tojon Consulting. So at Tojon Consulting, we'll help you with every corporate compliance that you need to do. We offer outsourced accounting services, tax services, audit services, business development, IT implementation, websites, CAC services. We are your trusted and reliable business partner, and you can feel free to call us any day, anytime, and we'll be glad to receive you. So let's dive into today's video. Withholding VAT, corporate tax compliance in Nigeria. So we have different tax compliances that individual organization needs to comply with in Nigeria to ensure that they are a responsible business organization. And for this withholding VAT, as you can see, we have withholding tax, but this is withholding VAT. And as you know, that VAT is basically remitted to Federal Inland Revenue Service. So by next year, Federal Inland Revenue Service will no longer be Federal Inland Revenue Service, but Nigerian Revenue Service. But as we speak now, in this month of September, they are still called Federal Inland Revenue Service. And we'll be looking at withholding VAT, which is a corporate tax compliance in Nigeria. So let's go on with me. Withholding VAT, what does it mean? In Nigeria, withholding VAT, which is value added tax, that is VAT, is part of tax compliance framework introduced by Inland Revenue Service to improve VAT collections. So it is done to ensure that there is, compliance in value-added tax collection in the country, so that organization, businesses are not, invading the tax in any way or in any form. So that is why withholding VAT is introduced to enable organization to remit this tax accordingly. We have withholding tax itself, and withholding tax we have for state, we have for federal government, which is FIRS. But for this withholding VAT, it is basically to Federal Inland Revenue Service. So what is withholding VAT that we are talking about? Withholding VAT is a system where certain organizations called appointed agents are required by law to deduct 50% of the VAT charged on taxable invoices before paying suppliers. So when you have your VAT, which is basically 7.5%. So if you are an organization that have been appointed by Federal Inland Revenue Service and you have VAT on your invoice, you are meant to deduct 50% of that VAT that is charged on your invoice before you now pay the supplier. So that is what withholding VAT means. So you deduct the half of that 7.5% and remit to Federal Inland Revenue Service. Let's go on. So like I said earlier on, normal VAT rate is 7.5%, as we know. And in the new Nigerian Tax Act, it is still 7.5%. So from next year, VAT rate will still be 7.5%, just like we have it now. So withholding VAT, like I said earlier on, is 50% of the 7.5% VAT that is charged on vatable goods and services. So meaning that the withholding VAT will be 3.75%. That is the half of the VAT that is charged on the invoice. So instead of paying the supplier, the contractor, the full VAT, the agents remit half directly to Federal Inland Revenue Service, while the supplier accounts for the other half. So if you have been given the 7.5%, you need to withhold 50% of the 7.5% VAT and remit to Federal Inland Revenue Service, while the remaining half will be paid alongside the amount of the goods or services on the invoice, and then the supplier or the contractor, whoever it is, will remit the remaining half. Who are withholding VAT agents? Who are the people that is saddled with this responsibility of withholding VAT? The following are mandated by law to deduct and remit withholding VAT. Number one, federal and state government ministries, departments, and agency. So that is what we call MDAs. So government, parastatals, department, ministries are meant to withhold VAT. So they are appointed agents. Another one, people is companies operating in Nigeria appointed by FIRS. So there are some companies that are operating in Nigeria that have been appointed by Federal Inland Revenue Service themselves, FIRS, to be a collecting agent, appointed agent. Then the third one is multinationals and large corporate organizations are people that are meant to be agents of withholding VAT. Let's move on. So how does this withholding VAT work? We'll be looking at a practical example on withholding VAT. Let's take, for example, a contractor issues an invoice of 1 million naira. The VAT on the 1 million naira is 7.5%, which will be 75,000. That is 7.5% of 1 million. Total invoice will be 1,075,000. That's 75,000 plus 1 million invoice will be 1,075,000. Withholding VAT will be 50% of 75,000. Like I said earlier on, the half of the 7.5%. So from this example, the half of the 75,000 will be 37,500. If you divide 75,000 by 2, that is half. Then another thing is that supplier receives 1,037,500. So that is half of the VAT amount and the amount of the invoice. The deducted 37,500 is remitted by the agent directly to Federal Inland Revenue Service. So the agent will account for 37,500, half of the 75,000, while the contractor or the supplier will account for the remaining 37,500 to FIRS. The supplier can then claim credit for the VAT withheld when filing monthly VAT returns, because VAT is actually remitted on the 21st of the following month after it has been paid for. So withholding VAT is remitted on the 14th of the following month. So that means we have a weak, gap between withholding VAT remittance and value added tax remittance itself. So the supplier, instead of the supplier remitting the 7.5% directly, it will only remit 7.5% because it would have received a credit of the 37,500 on the 14th of the month. So by the time, he wants to remit for the VAT on the 21st of the month, so he would have seen the credit, and instead of him filing for the 7.5%, we will only file for 3.75%, which is the 37,500 that we are using as an example. Let's move on. Why withholding VAT matters? Why does it really matter? Why are we doing withholding VAT instead of the VAT itself, the 7.5% itself? The first thing is that it improves tax compliance. That is the number one reason. It improves it. It enhances it. It ensures that FIRs get VAT upfront. So FIRs will be able to get 3.75% on the 14th of the following month, which is the deadline of remitting the withholding VAT. Then the second thing is that it reduces tax evasion, like people running away from paying the VAT. It reduces it, it curbs it, it makes sure that, all those evasion, is totally, eliminated or reduced to the barest minimum. So large organizations remit directly to government. They remit it directly by themselves. So if you withhold the VAT, you will remit it directly to Federal Inland Revenue Service. Another thing is that it provides VAT credits. It provides VAT credit. Suppliers use withheld VAT to offset their tax liability, just like I explained in the slide before this one, in the practical example. Of course, before you remit the VAT, you would have gotten the tax identification number. And remember that we've been bringing you tax compliances, TIN registration in Nigeria. So you need to have your tax identification number. Once you have your tax identification number, any VAT that is remitted in the name of the company will, have the credit on their tax promax, on their tax portal, and they can use it as tax credit to reduce whatever tax that they are paying in terms of value added tax that we're talking about now. So meaning that your tax identification number is very important. And in the new Nigerian Tax Act that will be effective on the 1st of January 2026, individual, corporate, taxpayers must have tax identification number. We will also be bringing you that video about the importance, the compulsory that it has been given for individuals and corporate organization, both enterprise companies, to have their tax identification number. And it has been said that companies, individual that doesn't have tax identification number will not be able to use their bank account, and that will not be too good for individuals and organizations. We'll be bringing you a video about that as well. So that would mean that you will need to subscribe to our YouTube channels, like, comment, share with individual business owners that will need all this information, enlightenment, educative video about the tax laws, about the business space, what is going on in terms of the regulation, compliances, and every other thing that individual and organization needs to comply with to be a responsible citizen of Nigeria and to comply with the laws in terms of doing all their businesses. Then another thing is that it is mandatory for selected businesses. Non-compliance attracts penalties. Of course, it is not every business organization that is within this scope of doing withholding VAT. It is just selected businesses. So you need to know if you are part of the businesses that are meant to be a withholding VAT agent. Of recent, there was a lawsuit, a legal case that happened between Bolt. We know Bolt. They are a non-resident company, although they operate in Nigeria as well. So FIRS have appointed them to be a withholding VAT collection agents, but they actually failed in this responsibility, and FIRS have to take them to the tax tribunal courts. And FIRS won because they came up with their own points that why should they be a collecting agent? But FIRS have already appointed them. They are part of the company that have been appointed, but they didn't do so. They didn't do their own responsibility, and FIRS won them in the court. They took it to the tax appeal courts, and they also won. So the matter is still on. So if the law has mandated you that you should be a collecting agent, you need, to carry out your own responsibility so that the law will not go against you in the end. And nobody wants to be doing business and will also be having legal case by the side, because it will be eating deep on their money, and it will be creating some distraction in some ways. Instead of you facing your business, you're having legal case here and there. That is why it is important to comply with the laws. Let's move on. Key compliance rules as regards this withholding VAT. Number one, withholding VAT deducted must be remitted to FIRS by the 14th of the following month, like I stated earlier on. So the deadline for withholding VAT is 14th of the following months. Why the VAT itself, the deadline is 21st of the following month. That means there is a week grace, a week gap between withholding VAT and the value added tax itself. Then another thing is FIRS issues credit note to suppliers for VAT withheld. They will give you a credit note, which you will use to, reduce your tax liability. Then another thing is that failure to deduct or remit attracts penalties and interest under the VAT Act. There's a penalty, there's a sanction if you fail to deduct or remit what you have deducted to the Federal Act. So it's more cost effective, is more cheaper than failing to comply. For stress-free tax services, we are Tozon Consulting. We are always here to help you in every of your tax, obligations, responsibility, keep you informed, keep you updated, and coming to next year, preparing you ahead. We can serve you as a tax consultant, as your external auditor, as your, CAC accredited agents, filing all your annual returns, registering your businesses, ensuring that you comply to the laws and regulations guiding the proper dealing of business in Nigeria. You can reach out to us on WhatsApp or through calls on our phone number as this, and you can email us as well at website at www.tozonconsulting.com. We are also on all the social media platforms. Make sure you subscribe, you like, You comment, you share on our social media platform, refer us to people that need our professional services. We are an accounting audit consulting firm. You can feel free to reach out to us any day, anytime, and we'll be glad to receive you and help you to partner with you in progress for your business. Thank you once again. Until we meet in another video, do have a good day and stay compliant. Thank you.